An extensive, sophisticated neural network was discovered in the heart, consisting of tens of thousands of neurons that are literally processing information locally in the heart. That understanding, like, what? There are brain cells in the heart? Yeah, but you don't call them brain cells because they're in the heart. So they're actually neurons, nerve cells that process information. Okay, that's kind of wild. And so it started to be called the heart brain.
Bruce Cryer is the former CEO of the HeartMath Institute and founder of Vybrato. In this conversation, he reveals revolutionary discoveries about the hidden powers of your heart. Many of these ideas and practices were once revered by ancient wisdom, yet largely they have been lost in our modern world. Understanding the power of the heart is about more than just feeling good. It's about connecting with an intelligence that can fundamentally transform your life.
We had that understanding already that there was intelligence, and so that kind of fed our opinion that the heart is an organ of intuition. Not saying the brain isn't, or other parts of our bodies aren't also, but the heart is an aspect of intuition. You get yourself quiet enough, your heart whispers, right? People say that. My heart's trying to tell me. What's your heart say? What's your heart thinking? As a man thinketh in his heart. Thinketh in his heart. Interesting language.
How do you work with the heart? Well, it starts by making contact with it.
I remember asking him, so what does the heart feel like? How do I know it's the heart? And his answer to me, he might have answered differently to other people, but his answer to me was, it feels like appreciation. And as he said that, I thought, oh, I feel that. Oh, you mean that's my heart? Or at least that's part of my heart. And so a journey began for me then, and this was several years prior to HeartMath getting founded, which was around 1991.
The power of our heart and its impact on functioning is something that we can now prove scientifically.
Our emotional state, moment by moment, is directly impacting how our heart is beating. If we're emotionally distraught, upset, angry, worried, depressed, anything we would think of as sort of a stressful emotion, the pattern looks like an earthquake. It's chaotic. When you're able to move away from the chaotic, stressful feeling that you might be in to a feeling of appreciation, a feeling of joy, a feeling of love, of forgiveness, the pattern looks like a sine wave.
Before we get into this conversation, I want to ask you to join this amazing community of consciousness explorers. This whole idea of pursuing expanded consciousness and the boundaries of human potential while living a modern life is relatively new, which is why we interview revered masters, teachers, experts, and practitioners to help you on your own journey. To stay up to date on the latest conversations, simply click subscribe below and you'll be notified each time a new episode comes out. I am so grateful for all of your support and comments. I love reading them. Now let's dive into this conversation. Bruce, what's going on? It's great to see you.
Great to see you, Scott. Looking forward to this chat.
Me as well. Lots of mutual passions and interests and things that I think we both really want the world to know about. And I think where I wanted to kick this off is, what was that initial aha moment for you where you recognized that the heart was more than just a blood pump?
That's a great question. I know there was a point when I was first getting to know the man who a few years later founded HeartMath. And I already kind of thought of myself as a man of the heart, but I was young and didn't really know what that meant. But if somebody said, well, are you kind of like a heart guy? I would have said, yeah, I'm trying to be a caring human. But I remember asking him, this was the man named Doc Childrey, the founder of HeartMath. I remember asking him, so what does the heart feel like? How do I know it's the heart? And his answer to me, he might have answered differently to other people, but his answer to me was, it feels like appreciation. And as he said that, I thought, oh, I feel that. Oh, you mean that's my heart? Or at least that's part of my heart. And so a journey began for me then, and this was several years prior to HeartMath getting founded, which was around 1991, that there's a whole nother dimension here that I have not been exploring, even though I was already on a spiritual path. I'd been a meditator already for 10 or 15 years. I'd been a yoga practitioner for 10 or 15 years. I'd done a Tai Chi intensive 15 years earlier with a Taoist, very interesting Tai Chi teacher named Marshall Ho, and he was all about money and women and Tai Chi. And it was a delightful experience. And but I realized in that moment, kind of over a campfire, asking about the heart, there's a whole nother dimension here that I don't understand at all and have not experienced at all. So it was more of a mystery at that point. But as time went on, like within a couple of years, I found myself saying out loud at one point, I am here to pursue the path of the heart. That's why I'm here in this life. And that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life, is to pursue the path of love and the path of the heart. Sensing, without necessarily knowing, but sensing that the heart is so much bigger than a pump. And in fact, now some of the leading edge scientists are saying it's actually not even a pump. It works differently than a normal pump would work. It's more like layers that wrap around. It's not like just a kabump like we think.
Mm.
But the idea that it represents a dimension, it was a kind of unfolding set of experiences. That night when I sitting by a campfire and was literally saying out loud, I am a man of the heart, and that's what my life is dedicated to, was out of a profound sense of, this is a big thing. I don't even know what I'm saying, actually. I mean, I had that humility of saying, I'm saying these words out loud. They sound important to me. I don't really know what I'm getting myself into, because there was a sense of it's just a whole domain that's so much more than what Western science had tried to dumb it down to.
Well, it's so interesting to me because you're so on the money where, we draw hearts, we associate it with love, but like there's just this big disconnect between like how we understand the heart from an anatomy perspective, which is this blood pumping thing, and like all of that, all those emotional qualities and even additional capacities that have been referenced through many different ancient wisdom traditions for a long time. And I think I could be wrong, but it sounds like it wasn't that one of the big intentions of the formation of the heart math, really kind of really demystify like what it actually is and what the ancient wisdom was pointing to with
Yes.
science.
Yes, exactly. And part of my attraction initially, when I was hearing the vision being laid out by the founder, was this idea that we would use some mainstream medical and scientific tools to try to prove that the heart is way more than a pump. Because I think my kind of tongue-in-cheek response was like, the world needs another self-help system from California. But if we and we were based in California. On the other hand, if we were able to prove using mainstream tools, not, when holistic things try to prove the efficacy of something, but they're using a tool that's not itself proven. Well, what are you proving? You're proving with an unproven tool that thing, that doesn't work. You got to use, if you want to get into the mainstream and make an impact on society bigger than just a few people, you need to use the mainstream. So that was very, very much appealing to me. And I also felt that, I've never kind of let go of this awareness that casually in our language, we talk about the heart all the time in all kinds of ways. Parents instinctively, you're a father. At some point, maybe already your kids are soccer players, or they're running track or whatever, or at some point they will be. And you're going to instinctively at some point just go back out there and play with your heart. Probably your parents didn't tell you to teach your kid that, but instinctively you kind of probably are going to say that. Or at some point, a child of yours may need to get up on stage and give a little talk, and she's freaked out, completely nervous. And you say, if you just speak with your heart, it's all going to be fine. So there are things like this in our language that we all kind of share. And I've done this thing for years now, no matter where I am in the world, and talking about the heart. And I'll ask everybody just kind of point north. Everybody close their eyes, point north. And people have no idea where north is. Usually it's like all arms are going all different directions. And then I'll say, okay, now everybody close your eyes. And everyone, I'd just like you to just go ahead and point to yourself. The fingers point to the heart, about 99%. The 1% that don't point to the heart is up here somewhere, but it's a very, very tiny number that point up here. The vast majority, I've done this with covered Muslim women in Malaysia. I've done this with gang kids in Phoenix. I've done this with gangs in suits, otherwise known as CEOs, all around Europe. No matter kind of who they are, the instinct is point here. So there's this collective knowing that this is the core of me, the heart. And so that fascinated me, that there is this kind of collective awareness, but medical science in the West was like way behind, 200 years behind at least, saying, oh, no, that's all romantic stuff. That's what poets believe. That's religious, but that's not science. And we came along and say, actually, let us prove that it is actually, there's more science to it. You guys are just a little bit behind. But actually, we will prove out with mainstream Western science that there's a lot more to the heart than you guys have been giving it credit for.
So you were the CEO there for a long time, and as well as an advisor. What were some of the major breakthrough discoveries that people may not be aware of?
I would say one of the most fundamental contributions that resulted from research that HeartMath made was this understanding that our emotional state, moment by moment, is directly impacting how our heart is beating. Now, today, 35 years after HeartMath started, there's something that everybody has heard of. Anybody probably watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, it's called HRV, heart rate variability. We were the pioneers in that field 35 years ago. We began to use HRV as a way of measuring the changes in our heart as a result of our changing emotional state. And to help people visualize what I'm talking about is our heart's changing speed all the time. That's what heart rate variability means. HRV means heart rate variability. It's always changing speed. It speeds up for a while, it slows down for a while, speeds up. If we're emotionally distraught, upset, angry, worried, depressed, anything we would think of as sort of a stressful emotion, the pattern looks like an earthquake. It's chaotic, it's all over the place, and it's not subtle, and it's uniform across humans, across ages, across everything. It doesn't mean everybody's anger is going to look identically the same, or everybody's depression is going to look identically the same. But anything we would think of as a stressful, kind of depleting kind of emotion, well, the pattern will look chaotic. What we learned in our studies of hundreds and ultimately thousands of individuals was that, on the other hand, when you're able to move away from the chaotic, stressful feeling that you might be in to a feeling of appreciation, a feeling of joy, a feeling of love, of forgiveness, of anything we would think of as more of a life affirming emotion, a more positive emotion, the pattern looks like a sine wave. It's dramatically different. It couldn't be more different. Chaos, if it's a stressful emotion, beautiful sine wave if it's a positive emotion. That one graph that we published first in around 1993, last I heard it had been republished around 10,000 different books and journals, because that
Wow.
understanding that our emotional state, moment by moment, is impacting how our heart is beating. Why is that important? Let's see. The heartbeat can be felt anywhere in your body. You can put an electrode on your toe and pick up the heartbeat just fine. The heartbeat can be measured out in space several feet away from the body. Oh, that means how my heart's beating is actually being transmitted. Yep, and it's measurable. We're not talking about an aura now, although that's also true. So we're talking about scientific equipment can measure a chaotic rhythm several feet away from your body. Oh, that's interesting. That means if you're around somebody that's really frustrated or angry or pissed, you're literally in their field. Yep, that's exactly what that means. Oh, does that also mean if I'm around somebody that's really loving and warm-hearted and kind, I'm in that field? Yep, that's exactly what it means. And then that starts to, well, that makes sense. No wonder I like being around people that are appreciative and grateful and kind. Their field even feels good to me, in addition to whatever they're saying or their gestures. Whereas the opposite, your flight's just been canceled and you're at the counter, the poor customer service agent who has nothing to do with the cancellation, but is gathering all this frustration from all the passengers. That poor person is radiating possibly a very frustrated field. So we're all get even more so. So that one concept that our emotional state is dramatically affecting the patterns of our heart, which not only go to every cell in our body and outside of us, so people are feeling and picking it up, but also and especially our brain. So our brain is receiving noise when we're in a frustrated state. It's receiving chaos. And there was research that's all tied into this that years before even HeartMath started, that showed that when the rhythm from the heart is chaotic, it causes the cortex, which represents around 80% of our brain, to literally desynchronize. The cortical function is inhibited. And think about this: when you're frustrated, you sometimes say something you will really regret later. Oh no! Wind that back in. Too late. It happened. Or you make a decision that's extremely short-sighted and like, what was I thinking? Like, how could I have possibly thought that? Well, I was rushing. I was frantic. Or your coordination's lousy. I'll never forget one time I was frantically looking for my keys, and they were actually in my hand. I thought,
Wow.
oh my freaking God, that's pretty extreme. I'm that out of touch. So that understanding that our emotional state is affecting perception, affecting reactions, affecting decision making in measurable, scientifically verifiable ways, HeartMath is to be credited for, and I'm honored that I was part of that. I'm not a researcher, but I was part of all that going on. But I think that's a very fundamental understanding. And just the last point I'll make is that not just is that happening, but we have control over it. So we can move from a frustrated, chaotic rhythm that's not great for our cortex or our body or our coordination or our communication skills. We can move out of that into a more coherent state much easier than you would think. You can literally go from chaos to coherence. Oh, that's also the name of my book. Fairly quickly with some practice, some training, which is what most spiritual traditions are trying to do. We're centering ourselves. The intention is to quiet the mind, allow the body a state of balance to come in. HeartMath says, and you can go real specific with that because the heart's the dominant energy center, dominant electrical system, dominant magnetic system, dominant rhythmic system. You manage that thing, the whole body starts to entrain, align with a more coherent heart, which then, this is not, we're not just talking physiological, we're talking emotional too, aren't we? Because when you're more loving, it's hard to be chaotic when you're truly in a loving state. It puts you're in a different state physically, not just emotionally. So that's what I often feel is I will never not be grateful that we made that kind of came to that kind of understanding. We're able to prove it in a scientific way that very hardcore traditional scientists and doctors can respect.
And I so appreciate it, right? Because I think a lot of people associate, okay, yeah, oh, I get it, feel more loving and appreciative, and you'll be a nicer person. But I think there's now this understanding that no, this will actually help you perform at life better.
Exactly.
There will be a higher level of functioning cognitively, physically, when you are coming from a place of love. And I also think there was some pretty groundbreaking research I remember seeing about the impact of the heart on uh, intuition, presentience, like really kind of stuff that defies a lot of the conventional understanding about how things work. That I'd love to hear you share on if you're open to it.
Absolutely. Interesting you'd bring that up. Just yesterday, I was talking to a researcher about the study that you're referring to. And I was talking to him and a woman. They were both like, wow, that's amazing. So now I'll share this similar story. So the concept was HeartMath's view early on, we're talking early 90s, because it started officially in 1991, was that the heart is an intelligent system. It's not just a pump. It's so much more. It's processing information. And around that time, an extensive, sophisticated neural network was discovered in the heart, consisting of tens of thousands of neurons that are literally processing information locally in the heart. So that was kind of wild. HeartMath did not discover that ourselves. One of our advisors actually did up in Canada. But that understanding, like, what? There are brain cells in the heart? Yeah, but you don't call them brain cells because they're in the heart. So they're actually neurons, nerve cells that process information. Okay, that's kind of wild. I'm with you. And so it started to be called the heart brain. And so and now I lost my train of thought. Let's go back to the question you just were asking me.
Well, I remember there was a study about the
The
ability to predict
precognition.
outcomes
Yes, yes,
in advance of
exactly.
seeing them, essentially.
Exactly. So we had that understanding already that there was intelligence, and so that kind of fed our opinion that the heart is an organ of intuition. I'm not saying the brain isn't, or other parts of our bodies aren't also, but the heart is an aspect of intuition. You get yourself quiet enough, your heart whispers, right? People say that my heart's trying to tell me. What's your heart say? What's your heart think? What's your heart thinking? As a man thinketh in his heart, thinketh in his heart. Interesting language. So in this particular study, the way it was set up was each subject was being monitored in multiple ways: brain waves, GSR, skin resistance, blood pressure, HRV. So the heart rhythms were being monitored. All of this was happening. And what you were doing was you were sitting in front of a monitor. I was one of the subjects, so I vividly remember what this was like. You sat in front of a big computer monitor, and when you were ready, you clicked the mouse to advance to a new image. And the computer was randomly generating one of about 40 or 50 images. 30 of the images were very warm-hearted and lovely. The other 15 or so were not. They were either extremely violent, extremely sexual, extremely unpleasant, extremely horrible. You literally had no idea what was going to happen next because you were pressing a button. 6 seconds later, a new image would be randomly selected by the computer program, and you sat there. And depending upon what happened on the screen, your body was going to react, right? If you were seeing daffodils and kittens, your body would have that kind of reaction. Well, some people that might not feel that way, but you were going to react how you're going to react. Our theory was that the heart is capable of predicting in advance. There is an intuitive dimension to the heart. And there was another study that had happened already, done at a place called Institute of Noetic Sciences, also called IONS, showing that the brain was anticipating prior to an event somewhat accurately, not knowing exactly what the event was, but something about the nature of the event that was about to happen. So we were kind of basing our study on that, but also saying, well, we think the heart's maybe even first. The heart, put the heart first.
Race the heart and the brain.
Exactly. And so what the study showed was a couple things. Number one, women are more sensitive than men. Shocker. Women are more sensitive in general. We know that to be true. And it was also found that the heart was absolutely predicting prior to the new image coming on the screen, several seconds before the new image came on the screen, what the nature of that image was going to be, not what was going to be on the screen itself, but how it was going to make you feel. And yet the computer was randomly generating it after you clicked the mouse. So the heart was able to, they could see when they analyzed the data that the heart was going like that 6 seconds before the image even comes on the screen, subtly, if it was going to be a violent or scary thing. But if it was a sweet or more tender, more romantic, it was going to respond appropriately like that. So several seconds before the image even comes on the screen, it would be randomly generated. The brain was also anticipating, but it was after the heart. There was a gap. So the heart was first. And it appeared in kind of the model at the time was that the heart's a receiver. When we think of the 7 chakras and energy centers and even meridians, the heart's kind of in the center, a distribution point. And you could argue that the heart is a distribution point. Pick a level, blood, circulation, oxygen, so many things has to come through the heart. So the idea that we would be perceiving from the heart as well information from the future or from our environment around us is not crazy, because the heart's kind of already on a physical level. Yep, that's part of what it does. But the idea that it could anticipate the nature of a future event that you're about to see on the screen, that's pretty wild. Having been in that study, I'll never forget having been in that study, because you just really had no idea what was going to happen next. But you were kind of like geared up a little bit, but how you were geared up was not related to what was actually going to come on the screen, not consciously. And it was fascinating. So that was that study got a lot of attention because it's a pretty provocative concept.
I hope you're enjoying this conversation so far. If you like what you hear, let me know by clicking like, subscribing to the channel, and responding with a comment around something that you found interesting in the conversation so far. In addition to these videos, I do a lot of writing on the exploration of consciousness and my own personal revelations in my newsletter called Consciousness: The Doorway to Human Evolution. To receive these updates and more, all you need to do is simply head to the link in the description below, and you'll be added to the community of 20,000 plus consciousness explorers receiving weekly ideas and inspiration in their inbox. I look forward to hearing from you there. Now let's get back to the show.
It is, and I don't know if people really appreciate just what this means. I mean, if you just think about this, I know it might, okay, cool, the heart makes a feeling 6 seconds earlier. It's essentially defying the space and time construct where there's an information transfer outside of this space-time continuum happening. And
Exactly.
like, that's a really big freaking deal, because that's not how we think about reality. And what I think is so cool, if I could just share a personal reflection, is the wisdom tradition that I've spent the most amount of time in. They talk about how the heart is essentially the opening of the heart is the pathway to the connection with the divine part of your being. The true self is what it's called in my tradition, and that divine part of your being can see information outside of space and time. And so I kind of had this whole tutelage around that concept and what intuition really is. And then you guys, I found your research that seemed to be actually prove this with some things that we could measure in some capacity. And I was like, wow, this is so freaking amazing. And I just think we're really just scratching the surface here on what this all means and where it could go.
Absolutely. And I think I had similar ahas in myself in my own practice of what we came to call heart tools or the heart math system. Because as I would focus more and more each day, there was a period early on in heart math when watches that could beep, that could have timers actually existed for the first time. It sounds so cutely technological. Wow, an alarm watch. What a concept. But back at the time, it was a big deal. And so I'd set mine to go off on the hour, and a little beep would happen. Every time the beep went off, this was during meetings, this was driving, it didn't matter. Every hour this happened until nighttime, I'd turn it off. Uh, I would focus on the heart. I would breathe through the heart. I would just activate that system of the heart that as we're kind of talking about now. There's so much more to the heart than just being a pump. So I would practice every day for months. And I would do that also by focusing on feeling of appreciation, just as I would breathe in, like, ah. And at the time, my daughter was quite little, like 5 or 6, or maybe even younger. And so she was never the problem. She was she was always a source of, oh my God, whatever's going on, Alicia, my
All as
sweet,
well.
all
Yeah,
is well. And I would feel that wonderful feeling as I would breathe in. And I trained myself to, okay, every hour on the hour, practice whether you need it or not. And so I was kind of opening that channel on a regular basis, as many people were doing. I'm not some special case. I was part of the gang of HeartMath. I was in leadership, but I was still just part of the gang learning. And little by little, it became clear that not only was my system getting more stable, because I now had an anchor in the heart, which is what your tradition was saying all along. This is the portal to a
that's right.
way of knowing beyond space and time, where there's a knowingness. You can't say how you know, you just know. And that sounds bizarre and abstract until you actually experience it, and then you start to realize there is a way of knowing, but it takes getting quite quiet, and takes really tuning into that dimension that is the heart and all that exists within and around and for the heart. So I think it's very exciting, and I feel like the times we're in now, which really challenge our ability to stay in the heart, boy. I mean, I feel like I've been practicing like never before, just to keep loving and uh, keep my emotions as balanced as I can be, and let go of things as they happen. If anxiety gets triggered, if fear gets triggered, if waves of worry come in for any reason, to let it go. And it feels like we're at a time when it's pregnant with so much potential for doom, if we look at it that way. So we can feel the wave of, oh my God, I feel like a tsunami's coming for us. And this is the time the heart is made for. If the degree to which we can continue to use our heart and trust that your heart's not gone. It may be getting crowded out a little bit by some of the noise. So that's on you. I got to dig in a little more. Maybe I need to get out that old Casio watch and do it on the
There
hour.
we go. Interval training.
Maybe I need to do that, and that I wouldn't be bad guy for needing to do that. And happy to admit that there are days when I need a little extra boost. So, but I feel like it's profound what you're saying. I appreciate how you're leading this conversation.
Well, it's a profound topic. I mean, it's so fundamental, and I think a lot of people listening to this are probably like, okay, I want in. I want to be happier. I want my body to function better. I want to have access to intuitive insights and creative insights. How do I conceptualize making that happen? And I'd love to hear what you guys learned at HeartMath works very effectively.
Well, on the simplest level, what I described that I used to do with my Casio watch, which is to bring my attention to the area of the heart. I didn't focus on the organ, but it was more like the center of the
Mhm.
chest, more the chakra, but I wasn't thinking about the chakra either. It was more just this area where when I first held my daughter, which is now 38 years ago, and she had just been born, and the doctor hands her to me. It's like, whoa. There were so many emotions going on. I couldn't quite believe I was being handed my brand new, 5-minute old daughter. And of course, I instinctively put it right here. Who wouldn't? And that sensation of holding my daughter right against my heart was so profound. And so what we're trying to do is, by just focusing the attention there, and imagine you could breathe in and out through the heart, is awakening certain sensitive aspects of the heart, because of course the heart, as we're already alluding to, exists on multiple dimensions. There is a very physical dimension of the heart and what it does inside the body, but there's this aspect of the rhythm of how it's beating and how that impacts the body. There's the electrical signal produced by the heart and how that affects the body. So there's multiple things going on, and that's just the relatively measurable parts. So as you focus on the heart and just kind of breathe in and out, we picked a rhythm of about 5 seconds in and about 5 seconds out. So that's a slower breath than most people are used to doing. But we picked it because when that rhythm is happening, your breath and your heart entrain. There's a term in science for this, respiratory sinus arrhythmia. Nobody needs to know that term, but it means heart and brain are in training. They're synchronizing, and that occurs when we're breathing at about a 5-second rhythm in and about a 5-second rhythm out. So we picked that rhythm. Let's use that rhythm. That's the body loves that. The heart and the breath want to be synchronized. And guess what? We've learned later that helps to synchronize the brain, because whatever's happening in the heart, the brain's receiving the rhythmic signals and the electrical signals. So the brain, when the heart's getting more and more coherent, thanks to the breath and the focus you're doing, the brain synchronizes to that. And now we have a term, heart-brain coherence, that Joe Dispenza has popularized a lot, all based on the work of HeartMath, saying the more we can get into this coherent state. And so it's just as simple as starting with just breathing in for about 5 seconds as you inhale, and then just letting it go out for about 5 seconds as you exhale. But you're imagining it coming in and out through the heart, even though that isn't physically possible. It doesn't matter. You're activating that system. And so as you do that, and the beauty of a technique like this is, when I was using my alarm watch, I'd be in the middle of a meeting practicing this technique. I didn't have to go somewhere and shut my eyes and adopt a mudra. I could be in the meeting with the agenda right in front of me, eyes wide open, just slowing down my breath and bringing my attention here. And I would notice, oh, now I'm listening better in the meeting, because instead of my mind jumping around to the different points of the agenda or whatever it may be, now I'm bringing my system into coherence, which means all that free energy is aligning into a more calm, more focused, more coherent energy, so I can listen better, I can speak better, I'm more attentive to what's going on around me. So the simple thing, focus around the heart, breathe in for about 5 seconds, breathe out for about 5 seconds, and not straining. It's just a gentle, easy rhythm. And then what HeartMath fundamentally is saying is it's beyond just the breath. And so the sooner you can feel a feeling like appreciation, like the view behind you, Scott, is so lovely. And the view in front of me is rain, heavy winds, not particularly calming, but I'm looking at the background behind you, and it's like this beautiful I know you're in a paradise, beautiful vibe. And so that brings a feeling of kind of peace. And that's what we're wanting to achieve, help people achieve through this simple practice. So when you can appreciate anything, feel that appreciation, remembering how it felt when I held my daughter, remembering how it felt when she was married this summer, that feeling. Remember a conversation I had yesterday, that feeling. Remember that I'm going to see a friend of mine perform at a jazz club Saturday night, that feeling. It doesn't matter what you pick, but if you feel a feeling of appreciation or gratitude or fun as you're doing this slow breathing, that's like fast track to a coherent state. And then everything kind of works better.
Totally agree. And I think one of my favorite metaphors for working on the heart is treating it like a muscle, with these repetitions of feeling love, appreciation, gratitude, there becomes a more robust capability, like the default, that connectivity to the openness becomes more accessible, becomes more enduring, robust. And yeah,
Exactly.
it's just funny. Nobody tells us to work out our hearts each day. We track our steps, but a little bit less how much feeling love we're giving ourselves.
Well, exactly. And I think we really take for granted just how much negativity we either are sitting in the environment. You were talking about EMF when we were chatting earlier, let alone the negativity of a family, if unfortunately you may have that situation, or negativity of an office, or just the negativity of all the alerts with the latest terrible bit of news popping in on your phone. Whatever,
Yeah.
we're surrounded in more negativity, even when we're trying to get away from it all. It's easy to still have that influence, and I don't think we realize how often every day we can even subtly get triggered by something. And so that a trigger is a biochemical reaction. And back in the early 90s, there was a study that came out before. It was not done by HeartMath. It was done at University of California, San Francisco, that showed that anytime we are triggered for any reason, there's a surge of about 1,400 biochemicals into our bloodstream, because the feeling of being triggered is a feeling of threat. Oh,
Mm.
this is danger. So your body says, okay, it's danger. Okay, we send in the troops, cortisol, adrenaline, 1,398 other soldiers. Get in there ready, because you're going to have to fight, right? Well, no, it's actually just an alert on my phone. But we're ready. We're ready for you. We're ready for that next thing. So those chemicals hang out. It turns out that just a simple trigger, even if it wasn't true, like you see somebody's
Yeah.
name in your inbox and you have a reaction, you haven't even opened the email yet. That reaction didn't just go poof when you discovered it was a joke, not something negative. 8 hours later, half of some of the biochemicals are still in your bloodstream,
Wow.
getting you prepared in case you have to react again, because it's a real threat and you got to kill that email. Wait a minute. How are we killing the email? There's no way to kill those threats, but we're perceiving them nonetheless. So the point being, that's going on more than we realize, because it's not like we're necessarily having these huge reactions either. It could be just a subtle moment, like, oh, and then you think you've kind of let it go, but that reaction was going on in there. And if we're not consciously practicing, to your point you just made about consciously practicing appreciation, so I'm simply saying this other stuff's happening more than we think. Even I mean, I have a friend who watches no news at all, none. So I'll report to him, okay, that there were fires in LA. Oh my God, there were? And I said, yeah, like thousands of tens of thousands of people have evacuated and lost their homes. Wow. And he'll get triggered, finally hearing about that. But my point being, I think this is a time where it takes practice, because even if we're not hearing any of it, even if we're somehow shielded from all of it, it's still potentially affecting us in some way. And even if we're cool with the world, there's still family, there's still people
Mhm.
in the shop, there's still, we can be a monk, we can be a hermit and try to completely isolate ourselves, and then you still got to deal with yourself.
Yeah, exactly. 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 And I think this is the kind of nice dovetail into your latest project, Vibrato. And it sounds like, for dealing with just the calamity that is modern existence. And it sounds like you have a cool formation story that you alluded to prior to us jumping on that I'm very curious about.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, so the word is vibrato, and as a musician, I'm a singer by trade initially, early on, and so we learned that vibrato is a thing. Vibrato means kind of adding a slight wave to the sound of a voice, the sound of a string. Like a singer could be just a straight tone, or you hear the little vibration. Vibrato is the name for that, adding a little wave. So that's a term that I have loved for decades. So I was living in Florida. We'd had one hurricane, missed Orlando, wasn't too bad. 3 weeks later, another one's forming out in the Caribbean. It's called Milton. It was predicted to be the second largest hurricane ever recorded, Category 5, coming our way. The good news was we had about a week of notice, so that this was a kind hurricane that informed us way in advance that it was going to be massive. And but around that time, I also was developing some very nasty symptoms, and I went to urgent care and discovered I had a kidney stones and a UTI, a thought UTI, I thought only girls got that. Nope, you got one. And I was in agony. I mean, this is anybody who's had these kind of things, it's agony. And so at the same time, I'm dealing with all this stuff going on in my body. The hurricane is getting closer. And while I was at the urgent care getting the diagnosis and getting all the tests, the hurricane jumped from a category 3 to a category 5 while I was there at the urgent care. So like, which is worse? I might die in the hurricane, or the kidney stones will be agony. So I didn't literally think I was going to die in the hurricane, but there was a lot of tension. So I ended up deciding to evacuate, because with a hurricane that size and what my body was going through, I thought, this is crazy to stay in my house and hope everything will be fine. Crazy. So I went north up the coast, way away from the hurricane. And I was going through a lot. I mean, I was feeling the angst of the 5 million people who had evacuated all across Florida, massive numbers, because it was, again, we had notice. So a lot of people got out of town. So there was the angst of all that, millions of people. There was my body feeling like this is the latest of a series of things I'd gone through over several months. And obviously the hurricane passed, and it was fairly much south, but I went out on the beach the next day after the hurricane, and I was like kind of in despair and saying, and talking to the ocean, like, ocean, teach me, what do I need to know right now? And I got a message fairly soon. And the message was, generate waves. Don't just feel waves. And I instantly knew what that meant. I'm an actor. I'm a singer. I'm a dancer. I'm very much on the artistic side of the spectrum. And I feel deeply. And ever since I went through cancer and staph infections years ago, I'm even more emotionally sensitive. The good part is that I get really joyful and like awed by wind. On the other hand, I can feel the grief of someone, or the fear in myself even more deeply. So as I walked along the beach, it was like, generate waves, don't just feel waves, was a message to me that I can feel the wave of someone, or the wave in myself, or the wave in humanity around me, but I can also get stuck in that wave. It's like I'm in the eddy of it, instead of, okay, it's good that you feel it. I want to know what those people in Gaza are feeling. I want to know what those people in Pacific Palisades are feeling. I want to feel that up to a point. But if I overdo it, I'm no good to anybody. So generate waves, just don't feel waves. So as I walked along the beach, the waves were incredible. There was foam flying off the waves. It was quite a rough sea, even though the hurricane was far south. Like foam hitting me in the face like a blizzard. I've never seen anything quite like this on a beach. I kept thinking about waves, and thinking, God, I have been studying waves for many years. HeartMath's been into waves its entire life, 35 years. I'm a dancer. I love the idea of waves, music, the waves of a song. When it peaks. And I thought, I know so much about waves. I need to share about waves and help people, especially right now. And this was 2 weeks before the US election. And I knew whichever way it went, there'd be massive waves, right? Didn't matter which way it was going to go. Whichever side you were on, there's a 50-50 chance you were going to be in anxiety, fear, anger, shock, horror. It didn't matter which side you're on, 50-50. So I thought that alone is a reason why I want to bring something about waves. And so the name Vybrato came up for me again. And I remembered that name, and I thought, this is Vybrato, that I'm going to bring out my understanding of how to deal with the waves of life. When I got my diagnosis that I had cancer, I felt, which was back in 2009, I felt a wave of fear. When 2 months later was feeling everything was fine, I had surgery, they got the tumor out, I was waiting for the test. I thought everything was really good. I was feeling really positive, waiting to hear the test. And luckily the doctor called me and said, great news, everything's negative, you're in good shape. I felt this huge wave of relief. Thank God. So I thought to myself, I know so much about waves. I need to help people go through all the waves they are currently experiencing. Waves of fear, waves of anxiety. There are waves we can harness in our own bodies, waves of the heart, waves of our brain, and turn it into something, make it sound fun. Vybrato, that sounds cool. It sounds like an X-Men character. I will harmonize you. So Vybrato was launched 2 days after the US election. And it's a set of practices involving the breath, involving the heart, involving movement, involving music, as ways to move energy through, so that we're not just sitting in it, generating waves, not just feeling waves. And so when we're faced with anxiety, some fear, anything, overwhelm, oftentimes we do need to feel it. We're not going to heal it if we can't feel it. If we're putting it down too quick or trying to ignore it, like, oh, I'm a guy, I don't feel that kind of stuff. I'm good. I'm good. No, I'm good. Really? No, I'm good. Okay, you seem to be good. So it's Vybrato is really about recognizing, no, there's stuff in us that the 1400 biochemicals, they are still there unless we take action to move them on through. And in the environment we're in now, where unless we have the privilege of being pretty cut off and living in a really wonderfully positive environment most of the time, unless that's the case, there's an awful lot coming at us. We got to release. But we also need to be proactive and be generating waves of compassion for people who don't have any idea what our conversation is even about. Like they'd be listening to this and saying, I don't know what they're talking about, because they don't have a clue. So
Yeah.
how do we generate compassion for people instead of shock? How do we generate love when a situation is really turning negative? And so that's in essence what Vibrato is about. It's very much somatic. It's very much experiential. It's very much about breath, but also sharing. And even in these little classes, creating community of 8, 15, 20 people. Like we're on this together. We're all going through a planetary cycle right now. And the more we can acknowledge each other in this journey, the easier it gets. Like, oh wow, I got some friends that we're all kind of learn. Oh yeah, you got to release. And oh yeah, the body literally has a mechanism. This is what I learned a few years ago in some of the breath work. The sigh of relief. The body has this mechanism to release that is designed to kind of happen every several minutes, like every 5 or 10 minutes. A natural instinct to go like that. Athletes do it. Athletes in almost any sport. At some point, they'll go. They know I got to let go in order to perform at my best. So I'm saying, let's make that conscious. I call it a wave of relief. Consciously let go several times a day. So that's a little bit about Vibrato. It's an intent to help people move through things quicker and have a way of not just feeling more positive, but identifying where the surf has taken them under a bit, and recognizing, wait a minute, this heart is magical. The heart is so much more than we used to think. So you got a power in your heart, gratitude, love. You got that power. It's there. Yes, you have to practice, to the point you made earlier, Scott. You treat it like a muscle. You got to practice to get that muscle in shape, because there's so much to want to pull it back to the negative going on in life right now.
I think what I love about this, and I recently had a friend on the podcast that we talked about technology addiction, but there's this unifying theme I'm seeing with a lot of people out there helping people at this time, which is helping people to reclaim their power. Like we don't have to just be fully a victim to this, whatever is happening in the outside world around us. Like there are, yeah, just ways that we can just have agency in these situations and
Exactly.
take our power back. And I think this is a wonderful, wonderful example and service that you're talking about.
Thank you. And for me, as somebody who loves movement, who loves to make life more beautiful in any way I can, that's part of the point of this too. Is like, I'll do these sessions on Zoom, knowing how many hours a day a lot of us are still spending on Zoom. Pandemic's been over for a while. We're still locked on the computer screen, and so we're not moving enough. We're not lightening our spirit enough. We're not getting up and having a wave of movement and realizing that wave is doing as much as the little breath technique sitting down is doing, and it's more fun. Put on a track that you love and just boogie for 2 or 3 minutes and see what that does to your energy. And we need that. Our systems are designed to get refreshed. You live in a gorgeous area of nature, and you have that incredible gift of being able to step outside, and there's just this incredible system of intelligent, beautiful, refreshing energy all around you. But you could probably stay locked in here on podcasts many hours a day if you didn't make time and practice shifting out of that state into something more wholesome and life-giving.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, What's interesting, the shadow side of remote work is that it has become easier to just stay in front of your computer all day.
Exactly.
You're not
Exactly.
even getting up to go walk to lunch at a rest. I was in New York. I used to
Exactly.
go walk to lunch. I used to talk to my coworkers on the way. We used to like all these little things that are supportive, and now we have to be more intentional about that.
Yes.
One question that I did find coming up for me was I'm wondering if the heart, as we're talking about kind of remote work and being in front of Zoom all day, has do you know of any studies that look at the heart and the field and the impact that it can have on others remotely? And so, I imagine these original studies were done in the presence where there's two people in close proximity and how their feeling could impact someone else in their field. But do you know of any types of studies that have looked at that remotely?
Yes. So I think you raise a great point. So when we say that you can measure the heartbeat several feet away from the body, that's several feet. That's not
Mhm.
a mile away. But that's also a reflection of the technology that's being used. Such technology couldn't pick up a signal a mile away of anything. It could be a nuclear bomb. It wouldn't be able to pick that up. So to your point of the non-local effects is what you're really getting at.
Yes.
There have been studies done. HeartMath has done some. I mean, even studies done with transcendental meditation over the years, where meditators were all meditating for a certain city,
Right.
whether they were in the city or not. They weren't in all the places where there were problems in the city. They were in their home somewhere, at least a mile, if not 5 or 10 or 100 or 1,000. And there were indications from studies like that there was a decline in violence and certain types of things. So that those of us involved with HeartMath would argue the heart was absolutely part of that process, because what were you doing? You were radiating love, peace, calm to a region. We know that these fields that are generated, the biofield is everywhere, and so many people can experience remotely profound impacts, healing. I mean, you look at the work of Joe Dispenza, the Coherence healing work. A lot of that's done remotely, and people can experience all kinds of things. So the heart, being the dominant electrical, magnetic, rhythmic system in the body, the biggest field generator by far in the body, the heart would be a lot of the reason why somebody 1,000 miles away might be able to register some kind of an impact that could help them. So there's more and more research going on this all the time. HeartMath itself started a project called the Global Coherence Initiative many years ago,
Hmm.
15, 20 years ago, and a lot of their work has been uh, getting groups of people all over the world to all send heart, send love, send care, compassion to events happening simultaneously, to try to whether you can measure an actual impact. They're finding more and more ways to measure through random number generators, through remote sensing, and through biological systems like trees. There's getting more and more sophisticated ways to measure this kind of thing. But to me, we're just at the kind of the infancy of how do you measure it non-locally. There's some work to be done in the technology that can be so sensitive as to pick up something so far
Yeah.
away. But I think
Yeah.
it's a matter of time before all that becomes more and more obvious.
Definitely. And you can definitely have a direct experience of it. Like you listen to some famous spiritual teacher who talks about this kind of stuff and you just notice a shift in your system, just
Exactly.
watching something that was recorded a year ago. Um, it's,
Exactly.
it's, it's truly wild. And, yeah, the potential of it is incredible and exciting, and it also speaks to the work that you're doing with Vibrato, or just getting people together and having these group calls where people are starting to do these practices. I mean, just because you're not sitting in a room with someone doesn't mean you can't have a profound impact of being in that field.
Exactly. And I think when I'm leading those kind of sessions, I'm very intentional about the music I'm picking, and I'm not necessarily using standard meditation music. Meaning, I want to pick music that's emotionally evocative, that helps people feel like, oh, this is beautiful. Oh, just the music feel like if I shut up and stop guiding anything, just the music would be like, wow, I could listen to this all day. So I'm purposely helping people remember music, guys. Music. When was the last time you played some music that you really loved during your workday? Oh, oh, oh. I mean, a lot of people do, but a lot of us forget too. Wait a minute. Oh yeah, that song. Why didn't I listen to that song? I could use a pickup right now. And so I think that's part of the intention of Vibrato, is to use these things that we already know. Most of us have a favorite song or two or 10 that when we listen to it, it takes us into a particular state that we love. And that's why we love listening to that song. Right? You
Mm.
probably, as I say this, you probably got two or three you can think of. I got dozens. Some of them are symphonies, some of them are Stevie Wonder, some of them are Adele, some of them are my own album, whatever. So that we need to remember, and kind of to your point of the downside of remote work, you can be just as routinized sitting in a beautiful place, because the pull of the digital, it's hard not to just be locked into it.
And at the expense of my own podcast, I would offer that a lot of us don't even listen to music anymore because we listen to podcasts, and it's kind of in this productivity oriented world that we live in. It's just I've seen that in myself, right? Where I'm optimizing information consumption that I think will help me in some way in life, instead of just enjoying and appreciating some beautiful song and how it makes me feel for what it is, and that being enough.
Well, and you're speaking to a phrase that we used a lot in HeartMath, creating a joint venture between your head and your heart. And it's easy to feel like I got to your point, stay up with all the podcast stuff because I got to stay informed. I got to optimize the time. A lot of that's head. It's not bad at all. I
Mhm.
mean, thank God we have heads that can navigate us through and create a cool podcast and all the things that the head does for us. But the heart, to quote your tradition, well, I can't quote it, but the essence of it that you shared earlier about it represents a portal to a higher dimensional self that actually exists. Well, we're not going to get there if we're just consuming information all the time. And the counterintuitive nature is that, in my experience, is the more I'm able to deeply be in my heart, the more the openness, the depth of what I'm absorbing. I'm in a different cognitive and mental and emotional state when I'm deeply in my heart. It doesn't mean my mind is not working. It's actually the opposite. The deeper we can go into the heart, the more that scope and that capacity infuses the ability of the mind to process even better. Where does creativity come from? Where do some of the most creative moments come from? On walking on the beach, standing in the shower.
That's right.
Not because you're doing wild digital things in your head. Sure, that can do it too, but a lot of times it's getting out of the head into the heart, into a deeper level of knowing. And then the mind is going, whoa, thank you for that. I got this idea. I mean, I'll be in the shower and remember all kinds of things I need to do that day, or an idea for a project or whatever. Is it the shower that's magic? It's the warmth. It's, I'm not going to get interrupted. It's the
Mm.
this feels so good. That's a state you're getting in. It's partly your heart getting way more coherent because you're letting go of whatever you took into the shower with you. And the brain saying, thank you so much. I'm expending so much energy helping you deal with that stuff you don't release.
I think this is such a amazing counterintuitive point about really being in the heart as really a new way to think about transmission. Really, is how I think about it. In many spiritual traditions, there's the verbal transmission of what you're hearing, but there's this deeper heart to heart transmission that can occur between teacher and student that is nonverbal. And the capacity to
Exactly.
experience that is having your heart open and being in the heart. And I have experienced that, and it is very profound. And it's so interesting to me and so counter when we like listen to a spiritual teacher talk or something. We're like, all right, I got to remember this, right? I gotta make sure I'm paying good attention so that it soaks in. And that's actually not the way. In many instances, it's actually much more about being in the open-hearted state and letting it absorb.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And I think
Well,
especially now we need this, especially now.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And man, I feel like we could talk about this stuff for hours. We'll maybe have
Yeah.
to do a round two and talk about your Stanford creativity course, which is also quite interesting to me, because I think that's another element of the heart that we kind of touched on a little bit, but just, how all of this stuff impacts your creative capacity is, yeah, I mean, there's just
Yeah.
so much there. And so,
Exactly.
we
Thank
can maybe revisit it, and I want to make sure, Bruce, for people that are listening who want to know more about where they can just learn about Vibrato or any of the things that you're up to, what the best way for them to do that is.
Well, I use my name everywhere. So my website is brucecrier.com, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Bruce Crier. So I'm pretty much using my name. I've got a YouTube channel called Renaissance Human and Bruce Crier. So Renaissance Human is a term I came up with around creativity. But if you Google or if you look up Bruce Crier on any of these platforms, you'll see some of the information that we've been talking about today.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure to link all those places out. And thanks again, Bruce. This was a wonderful conversation, and I'm excited about people learning more about their heart.
Awesome, Scott. This was wonderful. I really appreciate when a host nourishes me as much as I felt today in how you are, the man you are, the being you are. It was a pleasure hanging out with you.
Likewise, brother.
All right.